As I walk along the path near the mouth of the Columbia River, I can see old concrete walls rising out of the sand dunes and grass. These are the remains of Fort Stevens, a place that once protected the Columbia River. The fort was first built in 1863 during the Civil War. Back then, soldiers stood watch here in case enemy ships tried to sail in. The first fort was made of dirt walls and simple cannons. A few years later, in 1865, the fort was named Fort Stevens after General Isaac Stevens. As I move closer to the old gun areas, I imagine how different this place must have looked over 100 years ago. Between 1896 and 1904, the Army rebuilt the fort using thick concrete and added powerful cannons. Some of the batteries I walked past were named Lewis, Walker, Mishler, and Russell. These huge guns could hide behind concrete walls and then rise up to fire at enemy ships. Across the river, Forts Fort Canby and Fort Columbia helped protect the river entrance too. Walking through the tunnels, I think about the soldiers who lived and trained here during World War I. There were no batteries here back then, but the fort stayed ready. During World War II, the place became busy again. More than 2,800 soldiers were stationed here to guard the coast. On the night of June 21 to June 22, 1942, a Japanese submarine fired shells towards the fort. As I stand near the old gun positions, it's strange to think that real enemy fire once landed nearby, even though very little damage was done. Near some of the higher ground, signs explain how radar was later used here to help spot ships and airplanes. After World War II, big coastal forts were no longer needed, and in 1947, Fort Stevens was closed by the Army. A few years later, the Air Force briefly used this area to watch for enemy planes during the Cold War. Today, as I walk through Fort Stevens State Park, the old bunkers and the gun pits feel quiet. Even though the fort no longer protects the coast, it still tells the story of how people once worked to defend Oregon's shoreline.